Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Stepping Into Frame, our podcast all about women in screenwriting. And today I am joined by Lorna. Hi, Lorna.
Hi.
And today we are talking about the film Somewhere by Sofia Coppola, which is now about 12 years old. Came out in 2010. Let's start by talking about first impressions, Lorna. When did you first see it, and what did you think of it?
So I first watched it last week, so I hadn't actually heard of it at all before, which you'd think with it being Sofia Coppola that it would be more well known, or at least maybe I just completely missed all the kind of hype for it. So it was brand new to me.
I only watched it last week as well, so I'd not seen it either, which is weird. I knew I had seen of it, but I'd seen it around, and I thought, oh yeah, I should watch that. But I must have missed it when it first came out, sort of missed that initial hype, and then it disappeared. But then just saw it last week. So, what were your thoughts?
Oh man, poor Cleo, what are you doing to me, Fiona? It's like, yes, Johnny has an epiphany, but he just Cleo, she's gone away for 3 weeks and he's just decided to go for a walk through the desert without a car, abandoning his life and his job, and it's just, so I'm starting with the end again. Here I go.
Well, let's go back to the beginning then, right? So you've got opening scene, you've got a Ferrari in the middle of the desert, presumably, zipping around a kind of racetracky thing. It's a really striking opening image, I thought.
Yeah, it is. And I like the fact that it was actually more off screen than on screen. So you heard the noise of it more often than you actually saw the car, and it came around briefly into shot looking really cool and snazzy and doing really clever turns. And so I was like, okay, so this is a very clear metaphor we've got here. Let's see how this goes down. So, it's noisy, it's a really fast snazzy car, and although you don't see it most of the time, when you do see it, like film stars, it's clearly being very cool and amazing, and so it's giving off the impression of being very snazzy and attractive and brilliant life going on there.
And having all the trappings of success. So it's a Ferrari, right? It's not like a little Toyota or a little, small cars. It's a Ferrari. So two things struck me in this opening scene. I really liked the opening scene. I thought it was a really terrific way to get our attention because it was such an unusual opening, but there was a couple of things that struck me very particularly, which made sense later in the film, and we'll get to those. But I guess the first thing was we as the viewer were set in one spot in that, the camera stayed in the one spot while the car disappeared and came back. So I was thinking, okay, and this was, I guess, my mindset right as I started watching it. I get why now, but it was very clear for us that we were in that position so that we would understand that this is a guy that's going in circles, right? Yeah. Like a life-wise, he's going in circles. So he's got all the trappings of wealth. He's got the Ferrari. He's got as good as it gets almost, and in terms of vehicles, but he's just going around and around in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the desert, not seeing anything other than desert. And then the other thing that really struck me was that he got out of the car and he just looked like, so what? Like he almost looked bored. Yeah. It's almost like, that it? So I was like, okay, so we've got a character here who's got wealth, got something going on, and yet he's not moved by it.
No, yeah.
Which is fascinating. Yeah. So then you go to the next shot. You've got this shot with the two strippers.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts about that one?
Well, I mean, obviously, because he falls asleep then, doesn't he? So he's got these girls that they're clearly familiar with, and they're familiar with him, and he just falls asleep while they're doing their very impressive pole dance going on there.
Yeah, totally. And it's funny, isn't it? Because it's like, if you think about those girls, like that traditional American like historical idea of beauty is about, the tall, thin, tanned, blonde-haired girl, right? So they fit. So what was funny was that not only did he have one of those, he had two of them, right?
Yeah, twins.
Yeah, so like double, right? So, you know, most men's kind of traditional fantasy perhaps in the singular, but he's got it twice, right? And then and he falls asleep. So, and just not moved at all. So I thought as a character setup, it was really effective in getting us to understand this really not weird guy, but a guy who almost had no interior life. You know, it's like he's dead inside. You know, like he's got all this stuff and stimulation, but he's not alive to it. He's just like bludgeoned by. I don't know. Any other thoughts on him as a character at the outset?
Yeah, I mean, because you imagine that there are probably lots of characters like this in real life in Hollywood, don't you? They're just this kind of empty existence and not much going on in between the filming. And so they've got enough money so they don't need to do anything else. And then they're just bored. And sometimes footballers can have that issue as well in terms of like drinking too much and gambling their money away and all this kind of thing, because they miss that thrill in between all the, it's a lot of I mean, at least sports people have to keep, and I suppose that, you know, he has to keep himself fit as well, although we never saw any evidence of how he managed that. He was asked that in interviews, wasn't it? Like, how do you keep fit? And he's like, the usual. It's like, he's got to do something to look like that.
Yeah, exactly. And even how he dressed, did you notice he was like really like with no effort whatsoever in terms of how he put himself together? And
his co-star was not impressed with that, was she?
She wasn't, was she? She was really cutting, which I thought was really funny that, you know, somebody does notice, even though he gets away with this sort of quite slobbish love away. But it's all about,
and probably male actors get away with that more than female actors as well. I mean, they I'm sure.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And also about, I thought it was interesting how the scenes that followed were then him going to coming back from the party where he breaks his arm or whatever he does, his wrist or whatever. And everything's about the external stimulus. He's just kind of almost bludgeoned with external stimulus, drugs, women, cars, parties. But yet he's just this sort of shadow of a human. But then appears Cleo, his daughter. And what were your thoughts about her?
I mean, she's lovely, isn't she? Oh, what's the actress's name? Because she's been in plenty of things since then. But she's just...
Elle Fanning is her name.
That's it. And she's just a gorgeous, gorgeous human who is just sensitive and not assuming in any way, and like and Johnny clearly has a good relationship with the mum, because there was no falling out there going on. She just dropped Cleo off, and it was and there she was, this beautiful girl just appears in his life that he doesn't at first fully appreciate until obviously things start to go a bit wrong later. Are we going to get to that bit?
Yeah, definitely. It was quite painful watching those early scenes where he goes to the ice skate with her, and she's ice skating, and he doesn't look up from his phone for ages, and and then he asks, "How long have you been doing this?" And she kind of looks at, like 3 years, Dad. Like, hello. So that was quite painful to watch in terms of seeing that unfurl. But even the mum, when she first picks Cleo up, and she's just got that, she's not upset with him, but she's just got that resigned look on her face, like this, I know what this guy is like this guy is useless, and it was kind of funny in a way. She couldn't even be bothered to be annoyed with him. She was just like, oh, you're hopeless.
That's true. I mean, there wasn't any animosity, but there certainly wasn't any love lost either, was there, between them. But I mean, really, as far as like ex relationships go, it was fairly chill.
It was, wasn't it? And she was a good kid, wasn't she? She was really well behaved as a
Yeah, such a gorgeous, gorgeous girl. And the thing is that they both knew where he was. And, he was clearly financially supporting her to a certain extent. And so there was that level of stability that he would be there. And then because later on she turns up at his flat and he doesn't realize that it's his day to have her, and he's just been across the way. But at least, she sat down and she was calm. She wasn't worried. She knew he would turn up eventually. So there is a level of stability there in terms of, and she has a nice time with him when she is there, even if it's not very structured. And he did manage to get her to the ice skating, to her lesson there.
That's true. And you're right. And even with his mate in the flat when they were playing their guitar.
Guitar solo in the Wii tennis as well, wasn't there?
Yeah, and the mate, there's a good relationship there. She didn't seem to be frightened or feel, there wasn't any signs of insecurity. So from that point of view, that's good. Also, she was 11 in the film. The character was 11. She was also 11 in real life when she shot this. I think staggering. Her maturity level was amazing. Yeah. But also her character was very mature. She was able to cook for herself in a way that he wasn't.
I mean, that can be a sign of neglect, can't it? Is that if a kid is really very capable. Not always, but it's just in terms of that they know that if they want to get fed, they're going to have to do it themselves. Yeah. And so to give herself the kind of structured 3 meals a day, she had to sort them out herself, and she knew that. And there was no kind of, shall I cook? Like, let me treat you, Dad. It was just like, I'm cooking.
Yeah.
And then
like the chopped chives on the eggs was really like impressive.
It was.
That is, I do that myself, So it was kind of,
some really nice eggs Benedict it looked like going on there.
Yeah, exactly. So how did you feel about then Cleo comes to well, she ends up staying with him, doesn't she, for a while, and how did you sort of take on how that relationship shifted over that sort of midsection of the film?
Oh, I mean, because obviously the car breaks down. So having had the car at the beginning, it's clearly that by her being there in his life, that's like he starts to realize that there is this superficial unfulfillingness to his life, where Cleo herself provides a depth and meaning to his life that nothing else does. And when they're just sunbathing next to each other in the at the pool, and he just says, "Do you want to just stay another day?" It's just like, oh, don't ever leave.
It was nice.
It was.
What was the turning point of that? Because I think you're right. Well, and actually a couple of things. So if you think about the first half of the movie, really, probably a bit more than the first half, it was very much the male gaze, right? So all the the vacuous women, the kind of the objectified women, if you like, constantly everywhere. Even the fact that in that early opening scene, I think it was after the twins had done their pole dance thing, he follows that woman in the car and he just follows her.
That was gross. What was that about? It's like he just like they make eye contact. She smiles, and so he follows her home. It's like he didn't even speak to her.
Actually, so again, woman from the neck up, right? So, it's like that's all he's seen of her, all he knows of her, and it's enough to follow her home. So it was all that. But then there was a point in the film that I noticed that that male gaze shifted, and I don't think it flipped to like the female gaze by any means, but I think it definitely shifted. And it was the point at which they went to Italy, and I think and like I'm sure you noticed it at that the moment when the woman stays over and she turns up at breakfast, and there's not even an explanation about why the woman's there. It's kind of just at breakfast, and the kid doesn't even seem to be surprised by it.
No, but there's a few eyes going on between her and Johnny, though, isn't there? As in, there was.
Yeah, there was very judgmental eye, wasn't there? It was, which was funny.
Yeah.
But when they come back, and you know the point where they're in the hotel foyer after they're back, and Cleo puts her head on his shoulder, and he gets the guy to sing the song to her, the Elvis Presley song.
Yeah. I
felt like at that point is when it shifted, because post that we didn't see any. There was no more gratuitous females anywhere through the rest of the film. Almost like that was the moment that he started to realize, and actually, arguably, that was the moment he started to parent, because even though the guy sang the song to her, it wasn't him singing to his kid. He got someone to do that. Like, he actually thought about what she was feeling, kind of for the first time, I think. Did you feel like that was?
I felt like the very first point where he started to see things through her eyes was when he was at the award ceremony on the stage, and she was watching him, and maybe because when she put that dress on and she looked beautiful, I think that was the first time she stopped being a kid so much to him, and he saw her as a beautiful young woman, maybe, and then he was like, oh, my daughter is a beautiful young woman. And it was that, might have been that moment where he was like, oh, she's not just this child add-on that just kind of hangs around. She's becoming a woman. And that might have been what started him starting to see things a bit differently. And then when he was on the stage, he looked awkward when he had all these sexy women dancing around him. He was just stood there not knowing what to do with himself. And all he did was look at Cleo. And it was that kind of connection that mattered to him, not all these sexy women that were going on. But I mean, like you said, it didn't stop him from sleeping with the woman who'd been upset with him the day before.
Yeah, exactly.
But
it was almost, I love that.
He did acknowledge the awkwardness between him and his daughter there.
Yeah, that's true. That Telegatto award ceremony was hilarious. Did you know that was an actual Italian television award ceremony?
Really?
Yeah, it was a real thing. And in fact, actually, if you Google the X-Files won it, and oh my God, I always do this. I always get on these podcasts and I forget the name of actors. Not the woman in, oh my God, the woman in X-Files, for God's sake, the actress. Whose name is the main, for God's sake. This happened last time. Anyway.
And Anderson, G, begins with G.
Gillian Anderson.
Gillian, yes, that's it. There we go. We got that together.
I'm glad she did it too, because every time I do one of these podcasts, I go, that person, that actor, every time. I did it just yesterday before. Anyway, that aside, so you should Google it. She gets presented an award at the Telegatto Awards. I think it finished in 1984. That's really quite funny.
Yeah.
Anyway, quick aside. But so that moment I thought was really funny, because it was almost like that part where he was surrounded by the women and they were all dancing with him. It was almost like a metaphor for his life, like he's like surrounded by that are, he doesn't even like. Did you know in one of the earlier scenes when the party was on, and he's just sort of cruising around, and then he sees this woman quite fancies, and he literally just walks up to her and puts his arm on the door and says, "Hi, I'm Johnny." And the next minute he's sleeping with her, like no effort required, and then he falls on her because he's associated, Anyway, but I thought that was perfect. That Telegatto moment was a perfect metaphor for his life. Yeah. And there's Cleo watching him, and maybe it was him saying, maybe this is how I look to my daughter, like here, how embarrassing here I am with all these women. So I don't know, but I think that makes sense. That could be a pinnacle moment. So, and then what shift did you notice after that?
Okay. So not long after that, that's when the car breaks down as a metaphor for his life kind of starting to derail a bit. And so it's taking the car that was so noisy and snazzy and taking him round and round in circles. It's not doing its job anymore, and he started to realize that. And he's not freaked out by it. It's like, right, now what are we going to do?
Yeah. And it's also symbolic, isn't it? Like it's such a status symbol and such a prop to his life. It's like, because he's out in it all the time, and it's almost like it's very much that what we would associate laughingly with like a midlife crisis thing. The guy who sort of props up his self-esteem by getting a big car kind of thing. So when that goes, it's almost like it was, well, two things actually. It was almost like that was the beginning of him having to not rely on the crutches of his fame and status. But what about what did you think about the arm in the cast and that, because that was there all through the film? What did you feel about? Do you have any thoughts?
It was until he tears it off himself.
Yeah.
So. I mean, it's got to be something. And like you said, with the crutches, I mean, there's got to be something about the fact that he's broken, and so he's slowly healing throughout the film. He also gets a cast put on his head at one point. Do you remember they do a cast for his head? And I don't know whether or not, because obviously that's supposed to, I mean, for me, that felt quite, like for me, I would hate that. I would not be able to cope with someone putting a cast on my head. I would just feel very claustrophobic. But he doesn't flinch. Not for 1 second does he flinch about them sticking all this stuff all over his face. They cover his nostrils at one point, doesn't go, what you're doing, and then they just clear them out so that he's got these gaps and so he can breathe, and the whole time he's just breathing calmly, not freaked out. And it's like he's just so used to life happening to him. People come along, they do stuff, they tell him where to be. If he's got one of these press things, they phone him up in the morning and go, they're waiting for you, we'll send you a car. And he's like, right, fine, okay. And he just goes, he's picked up, he's taken back, and it's all just, everything happens around him. So not so much that he's in the car going round in circles, it's like everyone else is going round and round in circles around him. He's just like, just does whatever. His best mate throws a party in his flat. He's like, okay, so that's happening now. Looks like I am throwing a party. Fine. Fall asleep on the woman. It's all very like, he's so used to life happening to him that he just doesn't. Nothing touches him anymore.
I wondered if that was a bit of, and I don't know, but I wondered if that was Sofia Coppola giving us a bit of a moment of showing us how kind of nothing he is, because I actually fast forwarded and went back and forth through the film a bit just to rewatch different moments, and when I rewound a bit about that scene, I noticed I love when you move fast back and forth between you can see the shots really clearly, like where the focus is in the shots, and I watched that shot and how she went in. She zoomed in and then in and then in and then in on his
and the breathing just so steady and calm. Yeah,
but it was almost like he was like nothing. He was like nobody. He could have been anybody.
Yeah,
and I wondered if it was sort of, if we were getting that sense of, okay, like how we talk about this is the guy that's dead inside. Well, this guy is nothing, because then later when he has that sort of epiphany moment and he cries to his ex-wife and he says, I'm nobody or I'm nothing or whatever. I wondered if that was the kind of the internal, like the purging of that feeling, like he was he obviously didn't feel like he was anybody at all. And I just wondered if that was the where we start to go, this guy he's got no identity. He's just this thing that moves around as an object that use for whatever, and but there's no interior in a way. I don't know, but great scene. I really loved it, and I love the poignancy. And one of the things I love about Sofia Coppola as a director is just she takes those those non-moments and makes them big moments by just pausing and giving us one camera view and making us sit there. And it's like that shot where I don't know if you noticed the shot where he smoked the cigarette in real time. And I loved it because it's like it makes us sit and watch and wait and think. And I just, as a director, I love it. Anyway, so what were we talking about before we were talking about the mask?
So you asked me about the cast on his arm and what that symbolized. And so then I went on waffling on about him getting the mold done of his head. So but I think together, I think the two do kind of it is a metaphor for him being broken, but it's his head that's broken. And that so he's slowly healing, and it's because he takes a cast off when he's with Cleo. And so himself, and he tears it off.
Yeah, it's one of those moments of transformation, isn't it? It's like the life before, and then this new time where he becomes this more evolved human. What else did you think about that transformation? How did you? So we get to hang on. Let's go back a bit. We go to Italy. Comes back from Italy. The change starts to happen. He has that moment with Cleo in the hotel. He rips off his cast, and then what else did you notice around that sort of that sort of transformation and shift in character?
Well, she goes back to her mum after that, doesn't she? Because
does she go to camp? Doesn't she?
She does, yes. But is that I can't remember the particular sequence in time, because he has that when he goes to Italy with her. That's no, you're right. That's when he drops her. Because there's two different points in time where it's. But once he's been to Italy with her, that's when she's been kind of dropped on him at the last minute, isn't it? And then she phones up and says, "No, actually, can you have her for longer? Because she just can't cope." Bless her. And yes, so on that second occasion, it's just it starts to be a real tenderness. He takes into account what it is that she needs much more. There's a time when his girlfriend turns up and she's in the bedroom. In fact, that's when they go downstairs, and that's when he says to her, "Do you want a burger?" So he says to the girlfriend, "This isn't a good time." Takes Cleo out. They go downstairs, and that's when the song is played, isn't it?
Right.
And
that's right.
So that's the kind of there is a real tenderness of looking after her from that point onwards, and still allowing her to take care of him as well, because I think the eggs Benedict happened after that.
And I think once. For me, the big transformation for him was once she'd gone to camp. So once he'd also she goes away, and then he comes back. It's when I noticed it anyway. And he comes back to the hotel, and he does things like he puts all those dirty dishes that are on the floor on the trays. He puts them outside. He comes back into the hotel room. There's a semi-naked woman out on the balcony or something, and she looks at him. And normally, earlier in the film, he would have taken advantage of that, and she would have been in his room, whatever. But he ignores her. In, puts the rubbish out, and then as he shuts the door, he puts a "Do Not Disturb" sign on the door. And I kind of feel like that's his moment of big sort of transformation, if you like, because it's post that he then rings up his ex-wife and has that sort of moment where he's in tears. I have to live differently, blah blah. And then he goes and does something which I thought was really interesting, and I'm not sure about it, but I don't know if you had any thoughts on it or if you noticed it. He then goes back and he goes out in the pool, and he gets on the inflatable Lilo-y thing and lies on it. And I thought might have been a little bit of a nod to The Graduate. Because there's this, I don't know if you've seen it. Where Dustin Hoffman is having this existential crisis, and so he's on an inflatable mattressy thing, in the pool, and I thought, I wonder if that's her like giving a little echo of that. But then what I loved about this one was then, you know, in The Graduate, he flips off the mattress and goes into the water and then comes out and goes into the house. But here he just kind of floats off out of frame, which I thought was quite kind of cool. I don't know what it meant, but I just thought it was really cool. Really interesting.
Yes, that whole transition. So just before she goes off to camp, there's the whole, like, the moments that they have are so tender there, and like I mentioned earlier about them just lying next to the pool, and just their hands so close together, and him asking if she wanted to stay an extra day, and then when he drops her off, like takes from the helicopter, it's all very exciting. Drops her off for her to be taken away in the car, and he's trying to tell her he's sorry for not being there, but it's all too noisy, and he's not quite brave enough to get closer or to say it louder or ask her to stay with him or anything like that. And he just sees her off. But it's that's just heartbreaking. That. And she cries when they're in the car as well, and when she cries to him and says that she doesn't know when she's going to see mum, that she's been trying to get in touch with her and she doesn't know when she's going to see her mum, and it's just my heart broke for her.
And it was an unusual response, I thought, from him to that, where she starts to cry, because he kind of, well, I guess it's still a bit of the old him. He puts his arm around her and says, "Don't cry," you know, which is not particularly supportive. You know, that was like the moment that he should have said, "It's okay, you know, you're not going to be alone." Blah blah. You know, but he didn't. He did. I guess he did what he could, what he knew, all he had to draw on. Which is kind of pathetic, really. But anyway, but then he does. Yeah, he makes that effort and he yells out to her, and she doesn't hear it though, does she?
No, she doesn't hear it, and he knows she doesn't hear it, and he doesn't. So he's kind of trying, but not quite enough. Like when she cries, he's trying, but he's not going to go as far to say that he will be there for her, because he's not at the point where he kind of knows that likelihood is that he probably can't. He's come to the kind of enough self-realization where he's like, I've just been a bag of shit. Yeah. And I can't promise to be anything more than that right now, because that's all I've ever been.
Yeah. So then he goes home, and then he has these moments that we talked about where he puts stuff out and he ignores the girl, and then he goes and lies in the pool. And then he leaves. Yeah. He rings, doesn't he? And he rings up the reception, and he says, "I'm moving out." And the thing that gave me hope about that moment was that the receptionist said to him, should we just pack up your stuff and put it into storage? And he said, "Oh, no, I'll give you an address." So I thought, okay, so that means that maybe he is planning on getting his shit together. Yeah. Yeah. So it gave me a bit of hope. Yeah. And then he took off in his car. Yeah. Tell me about what's on that section.
So he drives off in his car until it runs out of petrol. And then once it's run out of petrol, I think so, yeah. Or gas, as they would say, I suppose. Right. That's what I think is what happens, and then he just leaves it.
Right. So what's that say? What do you think what did you sort of read into that?
Well, I mean, the whole, because it's a metaphor again, isn't it? Right, raising its head, going. He's realised that his old life wasn't getting him anywhere. He's taken it as far as it can go, and he's leaving it behind. And he smiles as he's leaving it behind, because he's happy that he's leaving all that crap behind. But where's Cleo in all his thinking? It's like, okay, sure, he has this vague idea that he will get a new address, but the only things that he was able to offer that girl was the fact that he financially was able to support her, and also he was there in that flat and that she knew he would be there eventually, even if he wasn't quite there when she turned up. And so those were the only 2 bits of stability he gave her, and he's thrown them all away for this. Like, yes, you've had an epiphany. Well done. But what's it done? That turned you into an even worse father. Whoopie-doo!
That's so funny. I think I got to a place where and maybe I'm just being too soft, but I got to a place where I was okay with him, because I joined some dots which maybe should not be joined. Maybe I read into it too much. I tend to do that. But a couple of things. So Sofia Coppola always writes about, or tends to write and direct about, lost people, right? Lost in translation, 2 people lost in their own lives in Tokyo. Marie Antoinette lost a young 14-year-old girl, handed over to the wealthy King Louis XVI, lost in another country and another culture. We've got this guy who's kind of lost in his own success, right? So if I think about that, and if I think about, okay, is there redemption? So what are the signs that give me an idea of redemption? So it's weird things, but I don't know if you remember, there was a scene where he was in the hotel. I think it was in the hotel. Was it initially? And he was with Cleo, and he got on the piano, and he was playing classical piano. He was playing Bach, right? So I was like, whoa, hang on a second. Here's the guy that has no interior life, it is dead on the inside, that actually at some time in his past has learnt to play classical piano. And I thought, isn't it interesting that being with Cleo is the point at which he starts to then
comes down.
Yeah, right. So I thought that. Oh, quick aside, didn't you think it was weird how Benicio del Toro was in the lift with him he got in the lift, and there's the guy in the that actor. And I decided that probably, because they shot it in the, sorry, I'm jumping around all over the place, I know. They shot it in the Chateau Marmont, so that famous Hollywood hotel where they tend to, the Hollywood stars people filming tend to stay. And I bet you that he happened to be staying in the hotel at that day while they were filming. And they were just like, hey, could you be in the scene? Anyway, sorry, an aside. So there's a point that I think there's redemption there. And then I think, or a potential for redemption. And then, so there's what he says to the receptionist that, I'm going to get a flat. I'll get you an address. So it's not like he was saying, I'll just box it up, forget about it. I don't know if I'm coming back. Also, he drives out, like getting really into if I think about framing devices metaphors, you start from a framing device of a car, of a Ferrari driving in circles, going nowhere. Then at the end, Ferrari is driving on a long straight road, right? Notice long straight road out of town. So, okay, so maybe he's not going in circles anymore. Maybe.
No, indeed. No,
Maybe this is about change.
It's true. He might spend 20 years to find himself, and then just be like, by which point Clear is 31 and it's just like.
I love your cynicism. It's great. We've seen guys before.
That girl needs someone fighting for her on her side, and that's me.
You can never question your loyalties, that's for sure. And it's a beautiful thing, Lorna, really. So, and then here I'm going to throw one more really random thing at you and see what you think about this. So, because I was trying to notice things that in the film, because, nothing's accidental, right? In theory, most of the time. So there was a scene that perplexed me where he was watching the television, and I don't know if you noticed it, but he was watching a movie about Gandhi, right? And I thought, why is he watching a film about Gandhi? Like, what is this? What is going on? And first of all, I was thinking about how Gandhi of the white robes, right? And I thought, and I was thinking, well, he is often in a white bathrobe, right? And I thought, okay, is that it? But then if you listen to it, which is what I did when I was zipping back and forth, I noticed he talked about how Gandhi wears the white robes because in the Indian culture, it's very important. Something about it being very important because the wearing of Indian robes or the wearing of white clothes is symbolic of self-regulation or self-reliance, right? And then, okay, so the only thing I could pull that back to in my maybe I've made too much out of it is at the end he's got a white shirt on, a white linen shirt, like that sort of same.
Yeah.
So off he goes. So he leaves the status symbol, he leaves the prop of everything that he is behind, and he walks off on this long straight road, and
into the desert where he might die. Die from exposure.
One analysis.
Anyway, carry on.
No, it's good. See, this is what we do this because we put them all on the table. We go, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Maybe this was a slow and painful death in the desert for him, and Cleo was going to be left alone, and another abandoned child on the streets is basically what we've come to, which is fine. It could be. But maybe I was just feeling generous. I don't know. But I just thought that maybe I'm trying to find the good news, right? You like a happy ending.
I do.
I know you do. I'm giving you the happy ending version here.
Thank you.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know, but that's kind of where I got to. So I ended up, on the basis of me joining the dots in that way, I ended up really, really enjoying this film. How did you feel about it at the end?
Well, I could go all kind of, let's pretend it was happy ending. But the thing is that the truth is that the kind of self-awareness and that journey to realizing who you are takes more than 3 weeks. And he's left his car behind. He's left his flat behind. He's left all his friends and family behind. And he's walking into the desert to who knows where. And so he's going to need to find himself a job. Presume he's given up acting. Maybe he'll be able to play the piano in some bar somewhere. But also wherever he ends up, it's going to not be where Cleo knows and her home. And so what's he going to do? Is he going to take her with him and get in touch with her once he finishes camp and go, I've set myself up here? And well, how's she going to feel about that? There's absolutely no thought really about what it is that she needs. It's just that her existence in his life, and it's suddenly him noticing her as a human being, an adult, has suddenly made him go, oh, I need to sort myself out. And he's done it in a way that's given no thought to her at all, except for the fact that she made him realize that he needs to be able to be more. And it is for her that he wants to be more, but also his path to wanting to be more is giving up every kind of stability that she knows in him.
Wow, okay, that's really interesting. Whereas I would say that if in a movie because I'm trying to tie it back now to the title, right?
Yeah.
And a movie that starts where he's going nowhere, he's now going somewhere. Da-da-da-da. Do you like that? Do you like what I did with
yeah, it's true. That's all true. But what does that do for Cleo? What about Cleo?
Hang on. He's got a mobile phone, right? So I think he's going to go and get himself sorted out, and maybe he goes through the desert to a nice suburban town on the outskirts of Los Angeles or wherever.
I'm imagining
And no, I just because also like he's rich, right? So he's not hard up.
Well, he's not badly off, but also his flat isn't exactly palatial. He doesn't have masses of money. He does okay. And clearly, gets lots of press junkets and everything like that, and gets driven around and has an agent. But the agent won't be getting him any more work, because that's not what he wants to do anymore, clearly. And so I don't think he's got masses of money.
See, I suspect if you are in a position where you're able to leave your Ferrari on the side of the road with the key in the ignition, then you're probably okay for cash. That's what I think.
Yeah, well, yeah, but also why would he like have such a small flat by comparison to?
Well, he's in the hotel. He's living in the, he's of no fixed address because he's, I don't know, I don't know. Who knows? What we need here from this, Lorna, is somewhere too. We need the second film.
Yeah, and then it's just them being happy together, and he's found himself a nice, and obviously that there has to be some kind of conflict that happens in the midst of all of that. Maybe they're happy together, and then his ex turns up, and now she wants to have custody, and then that's a good problem for Cleo to have, isn't it? To have both parents wanting to take care of her.
Exactly. Yes, because that's point, isn't it? There is the question about the mum, because the very fact that the mum says, I've got to go away for a while with no fixed ending, I mean, incredibly traumatizing for a kid. You've got one flaky parent and you've got one parent who just disappears. Yeah, I mean, there are certainly questions around that from her point of view. So I'll give you that. But I reckon if we want to maybe somewhere part 2 could give you the happy ending that we all like so much. I don't know. See, I love that about Sofia Coppola. That's what I love. I love her ambiguous endings. You see it in Marie Antoinette. She goes off. We know historically she's going to be beheaded, but you don't see that in the film. She just says goodbye to Versailles, and that's beautiful. And in Lost in Translation, there's that moment where the Bill Murray character whispers in the ear of Charlotte the character, Scarlett Johansson, and we don't know what they say, and there's that ambiguity. So I love that as a device. I absolutely love it. I think it's such a brilliant sort of cinematic thing, but it also is unsettling for us that we like closure on our stories.
Yeah, but particularly it's so traumatizing to see the kids there. And I've watched quite a few films now for this podcast, but it's like, not the kids again. Don't do this to me.
All right. Next one we're going to talk about is not about a kid's story, okay? We will stop traumatizing you. And it's something that doesn't upset you so much. So. Were there other sort of points you wanted to raise that we have not covered already about this film?
I think, I think we have with round about the houses, running around in circles.
Yeah, we did. We went all over the place. We got there in the end. Cool. And so would you watch this film again, do you think?
I would watch part 2 to see Cleo okay. Let's write it. Send it off to Sofia Coppola.
Drop Sofia Coppola a line and go, look, I've got a great part 2 for this film if you want me to write it for you. So, I think do that for sure. So, on that note,
we can have Cleo walking off at the end. It could end with Cleo walking off in the end with a smile on her face, a young, confident, grown woman who's leaving both of her problematic parents behind, but she's okay.
She's going to be fine. Yeah, actually, that's an interesting point, isn't it? Yeah, if you'd have taken it from the kids' point of view, we would have known everything was going to be all right, wouldn't we? But very interesting. Okay, so thank you for that chat. That was quite funny and nice to have. I love it when we have differences of viewpoints on these films. And what are we watching next? I can't even remember what we're watching next. I think it's I think the next one is the for you and I is the.
Oh yes! You see, we get some happy endings there.
Lots of happy endings. So I'm looking forward to having a chat about all things rom-com with you and Eva. So that should be good fun. But until then, thank you so much, Lorna. It's been great as always to have a chat. And for anyone who's been listening / watching, if you have not already subscribed to the Script Department podcast channel, please do. It's free to do so, and we'll just ping you every time we have a new episode. You can also check out what the global team of screenwriters are up to on scriptdepartment.net. And of course, we would love it if you would follow us on social, on any of our social channels at ABS. So thank you so much for joining us again, and we'll see you very soon for another episode. See you later.